about anxiety, we have to remember that anxiety is just a big overarching category. It's a name we give to quite a variety of symptoms. And in functional nutrition and in our approach to mental health and addiction recovery, the very foundational concept is that one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
That anxiety is not one disorder that presents in one way with one cause and one solution. Like all of these other kind of mental health disorder categories, it presents in many different ways in different people, has many different drivers and contributing causes from all three legs of the stool, the biochemical, nutritional, the psychosocial, and the spiritual, and therefore has many different solutions and combinations of solutions. Very rarely is something caused by one leg of the stool with one cause, and all we have to do is wave that particular magic wand and it goes away. Now, I have had that happen, and I have, some wonderful stories when that happens, but that's not the norm. But I'll probably share with you my wonderful story of when that does happen, or it has happened. So that's the very, very first thing to bear in mind. The second thing to bear in mind is that anxiety, whether it's coming from psychosocial issues, spiritual issues, trauma, overwhelm, etc., is still mediated through the brain. All of these emotional imbalances have a biochemical component to them. They're still driven through disordered brain chemicals. Now, I am not so reductionistic to say that it's all due to disordered brain chemicals. And once we fix the brain chemicals, everybody's going to live a happy, copacetic life and is never going to have any anxiety, because that's not true. What we're looking at is it's the brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully. To do that, it needs to be fed optimally. And once the brain's neurochemicals are in balance and functioning optimally and being fed properly, our anxiety is going to be less debilitating. It is going to be more situational. It is going to be signal anxiety, which means it's telling us something's wrong and we need to step up and do something about it. And we're going to be able to step up and do something about it. Okay, that's healthy anxiety. That's the way it's supposed to work. Tapping us on the shoulder and saying, something's wrong. Need your attention here. And the neurotransmitters step up and allow us to do what needs to be done to cope with the anxiety producing situation. So that is our foundational perspective. Okay. And so through the academy, we focus on the biochemical leg of the stool. We focus on giving the brain the nutrients it needs and the support it needs so that we can step up and deal with challenging situations in our lives without developing debilitating or unuseful anxiety. The second point is that not all anxiety is the same, just like not all depression is the same. So somebody says, I'm anxious, and we kind of sort of know what that means, but we're gonna interpret it according to our own personal experience of anxiety. And my areas of vulnerability to anxiety may be different from yours. So if we start looking at neurotransmitter depletion driven types of anxiety. We start with the difference between anxiety typically that's caused by low serotonin and anxiety that is caused by low GABA. This is the first and most obvious distinction that we want to start with. Just like we make a distinction between low catecholamine depression and low serotonin depression, we want to make a distinction between low serotonin anxiety. Serotonin does all sorts of things in our brain and lives, and low GABA anxiety. So while there is certainly overlap, okay, and there really is overlap, and I think, GABA and serotonin probably work synergistically, there are some clear distinctions. So low serotonin anxiety is characterized by worry. It's more of a mental anxiety. It's more obsessive. It's more, we can't turn off the, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? Did I get this right? Did I get that wrong? What are people thinking of me? Okay, it's more mental. Now, of course, when we have mental anxiety, our bodies are going to tense up. Our shoulders may go up by our ear. We may like constrict because we're afraid of what's going to happen next. Our nervous system may be on alert in order to deal with the stuff that we're anxious and worried about. It's like we want to be prepared. Well, being prepared means getting into sympathetic arousal, and our nervous system is on alert. So that will come when we have low serotonin, worry, and anxiety, but it's secondary to it. Now, this can include social anxiety, minor social anxiety, like, oh, I'm going into a room full of strangers. Oh dear, I hope I look okay. Wonder who I should talk to first. Okay, that's manageable and that's very normal too. Well, I can't go to this party because I don't know anybody and I'm going to be standing in the corner and they're all going to stare at me and they're going to wonder why I'm by myself and I'm not going to know anybody and I'm not going to know what to say. And right, I've been there. And there's a lot of social engagements I didn't do because of that anxiety. That's low serotonin. OCD is partially low serotonin. So, these obsessive thoughts and behaviors to help us calm down, excuse me. Rubbing your little rabbit's foot before a race, is your good luck charm. Thank you. That that's low serotonin, or serotonin that's struggling to support us. Full-blown obsessive compulsive disorder is a central nervous system disorder or mental illness that includes usually low serotonin, but a number of other issues as well. And we're really not going to get into that much here, although I will be talking about it in a minute. So when we have the low serotonin type of anxiety, it's liable to also keep us awake at night or wake us up in the wee hours of the morning because of the worry, because we can't turn our mind off and we can't relax. So we have to ask ourselves, why might our serotonin be low? Why might we be susceptible to this type of anxiety? Well, it could be that we're just not eating enough protein-rich food and getting tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier to build serotonin. It could be that we're not getting enough exposure to daylight and full spectrum light. This could be if we're a shift worker or we just never go outside, or we work nights, or it's late afternoon and evening, or it's winter. So there could be a number of reasons for low serotonin. Childhood trauma and ongoing trauma, ongoing PTSD eats our serotonin up. Inflammation, chronic inflammation eats up our tryptophan and can block the production of 5-HTP, which then turns into serotonin from tryptophan. And so we have to be asking ourselves, am I eating enough protein and digesting it? Am I getting the rest I need? Am I dealing with my PTSD? Am I using stress reduction skills just to take the general load off? What's my inflammation like? Am I handling my inflammation appropriately? Am I doing something about it, or am I just ignoring it? And then, of course, taking tryptophan if tryptophan works for you, or 5-HTP if it doesn't, anywhere between 50 milligrams a day, which is just a tiny bit of 5-HTP, all the way up to 400 milligrams a day or more. Now, there are times that 5-HTP won't work. I'm going to circle back around to that in a minute. But now let's look at the low GABA types of anxiety and physical tension. Now, we can have phobias and even panic attacks with low serotonin. In fact, phobias are definitely a sign of low serotonin. But panic attacks can also occur with low GABA. Now, low GABA is much more physical. We're going to feel much more physical tension. We're more likely to have an adrenaline output where we've got, the racing heart and the pounding heart and all of that. But low GABA is where stimuli make us anxious or agitated, bright lights, loud sounds, itchy clothing, where our muscles are tight, where we can't sleep, not because our mind won't turn off, but because we physically can't relax into sleep. And so that's low GABA. Now, both GABA and serotonin require the nutrient cofactors of zinc and B6 to be made. GABA is made out of glutamate through the GAD enzyme that uses zinc and B6. Serotonin is made out of 5-HTP, which comes from tryptophan, and zinc and B6 are crucial there for turning 5-HTP into serotonin. So if we are deficient in zinc and B6, either because we're eating a very nutrient deficient diet, eating a highly processed food diet and just not getting the zinc and B6 we need, or if we have a genetic disorder that is called pyloria. Pyloria can be caused by stress and gut dysbiosis, but typically it's genetic. Pyloria causes a profound, ongoing, lifelong deficiency in zinc and B6. Well, because of that, guess what is one of the primary symptoms of pyloria? Lifelong social anxiety and generalized anxiety disorder. Because we cannot make sufficient serotonin and we cannot make sufficient GABA if we don't have enough zinc and B6. And so one of the ways to determine whether or not pyloria might be your issue is to ask, how far back does my anxiety go? Preschool? Kindergarten? Was I one of these kids who would, throw a tantrum being left at school or being left with a babysitter? Did I have to cling to mommy's skirts? Was I very shy when I was growing up? Um, and so these are questions. There are other symptoms of pylori as well, but these are the symptoms that make me want to dig a little deeper into whether or not my client might have pyloria. And there's lots of really good information out there. I really like Trudy Scott's website. I really like her book, The Anti-Anxiety Food Solution. And I like her website, trudyscott.com. She has another one as well, and she has a blog. She writes a lot about GABA and 5-HTP. And she brings up a lot of the latest research, especially on GABA. But she has a pyloria questionnaire and lots of information on her website about it. So if you want to learn more, that's a good place to go. With my clients, I won't diagnose them initially. I'll give them the pyloria questionnaire and then say, I want you to read about it. I want you to maybe go on some of the chat rooms, listen to some people who are dealing with pyloria and get a feel for, does this feel like you? One of the symptoms actually of pyloria that gets my clients every time when it applies to them is not wanting to sit in the middle of a restaurant, but always wants to sit with your back against the wall so you can see the entire restaurant. Well, that's a very kind of particular symptom. And my clients who have it say, you mean other people have this too? You mean it's the sign of a thing? And I say, yeah, it could actually be the sign of a thing. And it's one of the symptoms of pyloria. So, especially if 5-HTP or tryptophan does not work to make your low serotonin symptoms better, you do need to dig a little deeper and see if there's a lack of these crucial cofactors. Okay. What are other reasons for anxiety? Well, we can just plain have high adrenaline. Adrenaline and cortisol run together, and some people, they'll make more agitated or more angry or more intense, but a lot of people, they'll make more anxious. So here's one of my only one leg of the stool stories. So we have to ask the question of what sorry, I got distracted. What is causing the adrenaline output? Well, we know the obvious reasons for adrenaline, right? Something's happening that is frightening or is overwhelming or is stressful. We have ongoing PTSD. We're stuck in sympathetic arousal. We don't know how to relax and calm ourselves down, center our nervous system. And, adding 5-HTP and GABA or theanine in particular is an amino acid that is very helpful in partially blocking norepinephrine, cortisol, and adrenaline to calm down our nervous system. So when we're just, running hot for whatever reason, especially like before bed, theanine is a very, very useful tool to lower cortisol. So is ashwagandha and some of the adaptogenic herbs like holy basil. Some of the other calming herbs like valerian, passion flower, so on and so forth, hops, work on the GABA system and help fire GABA to relax us that way. But the adaptogens can lower cortisol and adrenaline as well. Lemon balm, exactly. When I was first taught about lemon balm like 30 years ago, it was, this is great for teething babies and their mamas because it tastes good and it soothes, it's known as nervine, and it soothes the nervous system and can be used in teething babies. Okay, so something called phosphorylated serine or Serifos is also useful for lowering cortisol levels both at bedtime and during the day. But there's another cause for high adrenaline as well, and that is low blood sugar. When blood sugar starts dropping because we've either gone too long without food or we have reactive hypoglycemia and just ate a high sugar meal, blood sugar goes up, blood sugar comes down really quickly, and adrenaline kicks in. Well, for some people, this adrenaline, as I said, will make them violent. Other people will make anxious. So I had a client, first session, sat down on my sofa, looked at me and said, "You're number 8." First thing out of her mouth. It's like, I am. A little intimidating. And I said, well, tell me your story. She said, well, I have had twice daily panic attacks for 10 years. I've been to three or four psychiatrists who gave me medication which made me feel crazy and didn't work to stop the panic attacks. I've been to 3 or 4 psychotherapists who helped me cope with the panic attacks, breathe my way through them, realized they weren't going to kill me, but nothing made them go away. So you're number 8. Well, I said, first of all, congratulations on not giving up. And I'm so sorry you've had to go through this for 10 years. Secondly, what time of day are your panic attacks? Well, first thing in the morning and around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, do you eat breakfast? Yeah. Well, when you eat breakfast, does the panic attack go away? Oh, I never thought about it, but yeah, it does. Okay. Do you eat lunch? No, I never eat lunch. I just work through lunch. Afternoon snack? Can't be bothered. Huh. So your 4 o'clock, panic attack, does it go away when you eat dinner? Well, now that you mention it, yes, it does. I said, well, here's what's going on. I'm pretty sure you have something called hypoglycemia, which means that when your blood sugar drops, it can drop very, very low. And your low blood sugar, when you wake up in the morning, is triggering a lot of adrenaline, which is giving you your panic attack in the morning. And because you don't have lunch or a snack, your blood sugar again is very low by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're getting yourself another panic attack from adrenaline, from low blood sugar, which goes away when you eat dinner. Well, that made a lot of sense to her, and nobody had ever told her this before. I gave her a protein shake. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I wanted to offset her, 4 o'clock panic attack. And I told her how I wanted to eat and, something as soon as she got up, a good protein breakfast, a good protein lunch, a protein snack, and to come back next week. So she calls me a few days later, cancels the next appointment, says, thank you so much. I have not had one panic attack since I walked out of your office for the first time in 10 years. So this was one case where it was simply biochemical. There were no added emotional elements. There were no, trauma elements here. This was purely what happens when blood sugar drops in some susceptible people. So when somebody has anxiety throughout the day, I always ask, what are you eating? Are you keeping your blood sugar stable? Let's at least fix that. And one of the things I recommended to this woman was to take L-glutamine upon arising to feed the prefrontal cortex and to turn off the adrenaline response. Either that or a small glass of orange juice. So glutamine throughout the day can very much help with the anxiety that comes from this adrenaline surge from low blood sugar. Now, anxiety is often also a very frequent companion or response to toxicity. So biotoxin illness, whether it be black mold or Lyme or pesticides or heavy metals. Well, yes, you see, you want to eat breakfast or have a protein shake, but a lot of people, Kathy, don't want to do that the moment they wake up. So there's, for some people, this period of time between getting up in the morning and actually making a real protein breakfast. So using either the glutamine or a tiny glass of orange juice to just carry them through from waking up to real breakfast is needed for some people. Yes, sometimes the glutamine the night before or a light snack such as yogurt will carry through, but other people have very unstable blood sugar. This is actually where we can bring in chromium and biotin to try to stabilize it more. Some people will wake up in the middle of the night with heart pounding and sweating because the adrenaline from the low blood sugar at 3 o'clock in the morning will wake people up. And they'll feel very anxious because of the adrenaline until they eat, and then they can go back to sleep. So what we want to do long term for some of these people is to bring in the biotin, bring in the chromium, bring in the glutamine between meals, stabilize the adrenals, because adrenal stress can certainly lead to more dysregulated blood sugar. Blood sugar becomes more dysregulated premenstrually. It's one of the reasons for the anxiety, the PMS and anxiety. So all of these things will help, but until the person has established better blood sugar stability, for some people it means going on a keto diet, not everybody. But until somebody's established that blood sugar stability, we need to be eating protein every 3 to 4 hours and using glutamine to keep things very, very stable. So, toxicity. It's really interesting that some of the signs of heavy metal poisoning or heavy metal toxicity is anxiety. Some of the symptoms of pesticide poisoning is anxiety. Chronic anxiety is part of neurological Lyme disease. So sometimes when nothing works to help calm down somebody's anxiety and completely revved up nervous system, you need to be looking deeper for toxins. This is not the low-hanging fruit. You see, I started this little talk with the low-hanging fruit. Where you want to start? You want to start with food, you want to start with aminos, you want to start with the obvious stuff. But when it doesn't work, then you want to look at some of these other things, such as pyloria, such as biotoxin illness or other toxicities. And then finally, we have food allergies and food intolerances that can cause every single symptom in the book. including anxiety. One summer, I ended up with 3 mothers calling me, all with teenage sons who had OCD. And I got them on the eating protein and I got them on the 5-HTP, and it got better, but not better enough. So then I had the moms do food um, sensitivity testing on their sons. And in all 3 cases, this isn't always the case, but this summer it happened to be. In all 3 cases, they turned out to be very sensitive to eggs, have a high antibody reaction to eggs. And that was what was driving the OCD. Removing the eggs from their diet significantly reduced their symptoms. I can't remember if it made the symptoms 100% go away. 3 separate families, yeah. But it very significantly reduced the symptoms to, bearable, workable. So anxiety can come from other things as well, but these are the top of the pile. So questions, stories, comments, if you guys have your own stories or success stories, I'd love to hear them. Yes, Elena.
It's interesting because just been going through some issues the last month or so with my oldest daughter, and who has 3 sons, age 13, 10, and the thrashing 3s. And she's 39 years old, and she started getting, and my son-in-law is just a stellar guy. I mean, he's like super supportive and wonderful, and she's going seemingly suddenly going through extreme anxiety, almost like OCD thoughts and this and that. And I was pointing out to her that she actually went through something similar over 10 years ago, when the middle grandson was about the same age as the 3-year-old now.
Mm.
And so, and also, she nursed them, a long time, not just, of course, they were eating food too.
Right,
but she went through a really similar thing back then, to the point where my son-in-law and I said, you need to go see a therapist, which she did. And it was very helpful. So I think some of it each time now and then is hormonal, but also now she's 39 and not 29, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also has a 13-year-old son who is clearly hormonally challenged. So I had her start doing the 5-HTP, the L-theanine, and that was she was really a big fan of that L-theanine, of which I am too. And then it didn't seem to be helping enough. She was still kind of spinning and wasn't sleeping at night. And I said, you know what? We've never tried that zinc and B6. So we have her on the zinc and B6 and also the lemon balm. Why? Because I had some around. Also, she and I both, my daughters and I both, you know how some people, when they undergo extra stress, they tend to use food as a drug.
Right.
We're the opposite. We can't eat. So really keeping her on top of that. I don't care if you don't feel like eating, you got to eat. And she has a really good diet. She's an excellent cook. She works out every day, and so all of these things have been helping. And also my son-in-law and I were both saying to her separately, like the life change part of it is that, you know, little guy is 3.5 now. She was not able to go back to work part-time this time because he was born right before the pandemic. And she also had to have a C-section for that baby, which none of us had ever dealt with before. Then came the pandemic, so she
A lot
couldn't
of
go back.
anxiety producing stuff.
Lots and lots. And now he's 3.5. He's kind of shedding a skin. He's in the thrashing threes. He's transforming to the next level. She's in between skins, as I call it. So feeling like a piece of raw meat.
Yeah.
So all of that, you know, just kind of like went into this snowball effect. And so we had to,
So that's the three legs of the stool.
exactly. So we had to like peel back all of those layers little by little. And she's more stable now. You know, she's still working on it. But yeah, it really is like most of the time, maybe more than one thing.
Exactly. And our goal biochemically, because when we're under a lot of stress, we use up our nutrients in great big gobs. We use up
Right,
our neurotransmitters in great big gobs. We
right.
use up the cofactors in great big gobs. Our poor overworked adrenals are using up their nutrients in great big gobs.
Oh, I had put her on the ashwagandha too.
Good.
Absolutely wonderful. Love the ashwagandha.
Yeah. And so we, in these times of increased environmental stress, we need to increase our self-care. We need to increase our nutrient intake. We need to increase our opportunities to rest, relax, and restore. But of
Yeah,
course, it's so much harder for us to engage in these self-care activities when we're stressed and overwhelmed. So it
right.
becomes this vicious downward spiral. And then we go to the doctor and say, help. And then we get put on a medication where we only need temporary help, but 20 years later, it's like, oh, maybe I should come off this medication. I don't need it anymore.
Right.
Right. This is where just increasing your nutrient intake for the time that you're under the increased stress, and then you pull it back, um, is very helpful. And then, you know, Aileen just mentioned, well, and Charisse, Bach flower remedies, which, you know, is a homeopathy form of energy medicine that can calm down and support the nervous system as well. I know that when I was moving from Denver to West Virginia 3.5 years ago, and everything that could go wrong, seriously wrong, went seriously wrong. And I was under an enormous amount of stress. And Bach Flower Remedy has these little raspberry flavored lozenges. And I was living on those little raspberry flavored lozenges because they tasted so good and they really helped. You know, and we were on a we were at a rest stop the day before we got to West Virginia, and the day before our house was supposed to close and we were going to be meeting the movers at the new house and moving everything in. So here I am standing at the rest stop, and my mortgage agent calls me and says, your loan got denied. Well, they've been working on this loan for 2 months, and I kept saying, is it going to be okay? Yeah, it's going to be just fine. Are you sure it's going to be okay? Yeah, it's going to be just fine. Well, you know, we're almost there. It's going to be okay. Yeah, it's going to be just fine. And he calls up, it got denied. It's like, well, out came my 5-HTP, out came my theanine, and out came my little raspberry flavored rescue remedy lozenges. And I stepped up and I coped and we got through. And they gave me a new loan 2 days after we got here. So I didn't have to wait very long. So yes, these, environmental stress causes anxiety, but we have the tools to support our nervous system to step up and do what needs to be done. Yes, Therese.
So I was just curious what I understand about the protein and I totally agree. But I was also wondering what you felt about fat. I mean, I find a lot of the folks that I work with, when they increase their fat, well, even myself, when I had OCD and anxiety 20, 30 years, and I was eating that, I got the whole lean protein, non-fat, plant-based. I
Good.
just, it really just destroyed me physically, but also mentally. And it
Yes.
wasn't until I changed my diet to adding in protein and fat was huge in my recovery. And so with my clients, I actually have a recipe where they do a fat and honey mix. Then when they start to feel that because of their low blood sugar, they eat these maybe throughout the day until they start to stabilize. So I was just curious what your opinion is on full fatted meats, full fat, yogurts and that kind of thing.
Very good. So fat is the other nutrient that our brain needs to function optimally. So every neuronal membrane, the skin around every brain cell, is made up of 3 lipids, 3 fats. We have the omega-3 fatty acids, we have phospholipids, and which are from legumes and egg yolks and that sort of thing. And then we have cholesterol. And if we don't have those 3 fats in the cell membrane, the neurotransmitters, we may have all the neurotransmitters in the world, but they don't transmit effectively. And the axon, down which the electrical neurotransmitter signal travels, is coated in something called the myelin sheath. Well, the myelin sheath is made up out of cholesterol. And so people on very low fat diets are very susceptible to all sorts of mental health issues. I always think more like depression, but anxiety and the various forms of anxiety are absolutely included here because the neurotransmitters aren't getting transmitted. And so we're going to be experiencing their deficits because they're not going anywhere. They're not getting to where they're supposed to go. So yes, full fat is crucial, getting a variety of healthy fats. We really need all of them. But it's especially concerning when cholesterol dips too low because that can lead to actual successful suicide. In the large community studies where they looked at the effect of very low cholesterol, there was an increase in homicide, suicide, and actually accidents. So yes, very good point, Cherise. Thank you. We absolutely need a wide variety of healthy fats and to get rid of the non-healthy fats like the trans fatty acids that kick out the good guys or the rancid fats. Yes, Kathy, you had a question.
I absolutely love this. I'm so glad I'm so thankful for you. I didn't know that pyloria, like that's a thing, like you said, with the sitting back, the back of a chair or, back of a chair or wall. I mean, I know
back of the restaurant. Yeah.
Exactly. I know someone. I know.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah, it's actually my husband. It's like,
so you'll have to give him the pyloria questionnaire and see what he says.
It'll be interesting. And then everything that you have mentioned about blood sugar, I've witnessed with my son. It absolutely, that's the most important thing in as far as his anxiety symptoms or his OCD. It just the blood sugar when he's hungry. I'm like, are you hungry? Because when his OCD thoughts come, first thing I go to is like, are you hungry? You got to eat. You have to eat. And I try to prevent it. I'm like, you got to eat before you feel hungry. And he doesn't feel hungry first thing in the morning, but I do give him a protein shake because sometimes he has those thoughts. So everything that you said is exactly. And then, like for lunch, he's not hungry, but somehow, obviously we give him that lunch. He has the lunch and then he has his dinner. But somehow after dinner, he gets super hungry. And he has the same meds morning and night, except actually morning he has the antipsychotic, antidepressant, and the anticonvulsant. But then at night he only has the antipsychotic and the anticonvulsant, not the antidepressant. So I don't know if that matters at all in as far as why he gets so hungry after dinner, after a full belly, full stomach. He says, it just comforts me. I want to eat before I go to bed. And so that puzzles me. But also I understand the comfort part. Maybe that's a psychological part. But the metabolic
Well,
syndrome.
so that would be interesting. And I would check to see how much protein he's actually getting at dinner. But the need for comfort, Kathy, is low endorphins. So I don't know if you're giving your son any dephenylalanine.
No.
But you may want to bring some DPA in the evening, late afternoon or evening, to see if that helps with the comfort eating.
Yeah, I'm curious. He definitely, in the morning, I can see sometimes he gets like the bad thoughts. And once I give him the protein shake, he's calm. So that tells me, and that's where, you also mentioned about infection. He does have some gut infections. And now we found out he's actually sensitive to eggs also, aside from dairy. So that's really difficult. I'm like, oh my gosh, no eggs, no dairy, no gluten. And actually, surprisingly, wheat is like okay, like he can rotate every 4 days. But of course, I'm still concerned about the pesticide and the gluten.
Wheat contains gluten.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I didn't understand. It showed up in the IgG test that says that he is medium, is moderate, is not completely avoid. But what's interesting is
Still cause major symptoms, even though it's moderate antibody reaction.
yeah, so I mean, I'm trying my best, for him to avoid it, but obviously he chooses sometimes different ways. But the what I'm curious about, the question is, can I start tapering him just a little bit so that the metabolic syndrome is not so bad, the blood sugar, because the blood sugar thing is what's causing.
Absolutely. You can certainly try tapering him. It's summer now, he's not in school, and see what happens. But again, very slowly, 10%, no faster than 10% a week, just one med at a time, and see what happens.
Because do I need to heal the gut first? I mean, I don't see
No.
how no.
No, but you should be working on healing the gut, but you don't need to do that first.
Yeah, because I just don't
It's
see
just
how.
that if symptoms appear as you're tapering the meds, you need to slow down the taper and then bring in the supporting nutrients.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm doing that. Just it's a balancing act.
It is very definitely a balancing act.
Yeah, thank you. So good.
You're very welcome.
How does everybody
Okay, we
feel
just have
about,
a couple more minutes.
how about the continuous glucose monitor? I was actually going to get one of those for myself. I mean, I'm a big protein girl in the morning and protein throughout the day.
Yeah,
Lately,
a lot of my students love the glucose monitor, continuous glucose monitor, and are very surprised by how things jump around. So yes, I think that's a really, really good idea. I want to go back and just mention zinc for a minute before we call it quits, because with these boys who are going through puberty and start getting into mood swinging and anxiety and stuff, right? It's why they want to start medicating with weed and alcohol. Well, zinc is a primary nutrient for development of the prostate and creation of testosterone. So if boys are not getting enough in their diet, their zinc is more likely to go to the survival of the species, i.e. prostate and testosterone development, right? For the reproductive system. And less of the zinc is going to be available to turn your amino acids into neurotransmitters. And I think that's a reason why a lot of, pubescent boys get into trouble, is because of this maybe borderline or overt zinc deficiency that leads to increased anxiety during puberty. So if you are working with or know, such young men, giving them 50 milligrams of zinc a day, preferably with a little bit of copper, unless there's a reason not to. And you can order just a simple zinc and copper blood test to tell you how things are. You want to use a functional range rather than a regular conventional lab range for those numbers. But can really help these young boys successfully move through puberty without derailing.
Would you do like 50 milligrams right off the bat, like, and with B6?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if the B6 is necessary,
Oh,
but it's the zinc that is being used up to create more testosterone and prostate growth.
uh,
You're
Okay,
saying-
right, because
you're
everything's
saying
growing.
15
50. Now, generally, there's 15 milligrams in most multis. So we want these, adolescent boys at least on a good multivitamin. But in active puberty, when everything is growing, they need more zinc.
Is there a
Yeah,
test
Kathy?
that's not a lab test, that's not a blood test, that tests the zinc copper level?
Yeah, zinc and copper is a blood test. You can get your doctor to order it from LabCorp or Quest.
Yeah, not a blood test. Is there anything that's not a blood test?
I have no idea.
It may
I
be a
don't
hair
know.
test. Maybe a hair test might be able
Yeah,
to.
a hair analysis would work. You could definitely do a hair analysis for this.
if you did the zinc for the boy that did not happen to have the bit of copper, would that be a big problem?
It could be a big problem over time because zinc and copper need to stay in balance with each other. If you overdo one, the other's going to drop. So if your copper's not toxic, if your copper's okay, and you're overdoing zinc, copper's going to drop. Well, copper is required to turn dopamine into norepinephrine. Okay, we need, copper has a lot of really important uses. So we need it. We just don't need too much of it, like anything else. Yes, Aileen.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, this is interesting. Sorry, I joined in a bit late. To answer the question in regards to a zinc testing that is not blood, yes, there is. It's called a zinc tally. It is a liquid zinc that
Yeah,
you
but that doesn't test for copper.
Right.
No, it does not. No, it doesn't. It's just zinc.
But that can be useful. So anyway, I interrupted you. Please finish explaining about the zinc tally. It's a useful test.
Yes. So you hold it in the mouth, and it's supposed to, if the person holding it, they don't feel a nasty taste of a metal and they're just fine, and you're looking at them and you time them every 30 seconds, and you ask them to cue, like, do you taste anything? Does it, they're just no, and then you just have them swallow, because that just tells you they're quite deficient. Because a person that's not deficient, holding that liquid in the mouth more than 30 seconds, it's nasty. It's like you swallowed a box of rotten, what is that? Nails that are, all old
Rusted nails.
rusted. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Rusted nails. So if they don't, right there, yeah, but it does not tell you the level of the copper. Yeah. But usually if they do have a balanced, quote unquote, a variety diet where they don't have too many restrictions, you could also just, do an analysis or an understanding on their diet as far as, the copper rich foods, which are, generally seeds and nuts. And if they're not whole grains, again, if there is a gluten problem, if there is a seed and nut problem, if they're not organ eaters, it becomes a bit of a problem. So then the signs of the copper deficiency would be, if they tend to be anemic, their body temperature, drops, they've had like osteoporosis or bone fractures in their history, their low white blood cell counts are low. They've said that, they've had irregular heartbeat here and there, and the pigmentation from the skin is very low, and they tend to have thyroid challenges, then that there's copper deficiency might be part of the problem. Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
absolutely.
All right, ladies. It's almost 10 after 12, so let's say goodbye. Any final question or comment?
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
Saturday.
Thank you. Good to
Thank
see
you, Christina.
everybody.
This was great. I appreciate it.
Me
Yes.
too.
Right. You're so welcome. So nice seeing you all. All
All
right.
right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.